What's up, Buttercups? Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams, here in the Lions of Liberty Network. I will tell you, it's going to be a shorter show. I am very distracted. Over the past 2 hours, I had a neighbor that lives catty corner to me have an attempted suicide in their home. And all the ambulances, all the sheriffs, all the fire departments, that was all there for a while. So hopefully they are okay. So that happened. And then I just found out that a very good friend of mine was in the hospital for several major surgeries just before doing this. So it's been a little out there, a little stressful. But the show must go on. And there's a couple things I want to talk about today that maybe you'll hear my take and haven't heard anywhere else, so figure I'm going to lay it on you. First things first, the left, this includes academia, this includes mainstream media, this includes leftist politicians, have been telling us that the right has become radicalized. That never forget, Joe Biden told us that white extremism was the greatest threat to America, even though we all know that was complete and utter hogwash and was just another reason to usher in additional surveillance states. When it comes down to brass tacks, the University of Cambridge in the UK, which is funny because this is the same University of Cambridge that had the Jason Arday scandal, at least I'm 99% sure. I don't think there's many of them out there. They just put out a study that shows that, number one, they can actually do interesting research, but they put out a study showing that over the past 35 years, basically, actually, maybe 45 years since the late 80s. So, hard to pin the exact time, but since the late 80s, that leftists have become, by their estimation, 10 times more radicalized than people that are on the, quote, right. Now, as I said, this comes as people on the right, people like myself, and I don't even consider myself on the right? But as Bill Maher has said time and time again, I stayed in the same place and all of you went crazy and disappeared from the average conception of what reality is. So people like me, people like you that are watching this have been in the same place, basically saying, well, yeah, you need to have certain aspects for civil society. You need to have common sense. You should not be telling every child the age of 5 that they should be taking hormones. You shouldn't have schools keeping secrets from transitioning children. And there was just a California school, which is now coming under fire because they were transitioning children as of the age of 5. 5 years old, transitioning children as of the age of 5 and not telling their parents that they were calling them different names, different pronouns, and essentially ushering in a brand new identity at school. I mean, this is absolutely perverse, and any thinking person that's rational would agree with that. Let's not forget during COVID, how insane people went on the left compared to the right. You said, let's slow this down. Let's take this. Let's look at the data. Let's believe our eyes. Let's look at the empirical evidence in front of us and know that we shouldn't be, shutting society down and stopping people from going to work and shutting down business. All of these different things, going even to the point of like the views on race, the views on immigration. In the 80s, there was at least a dialogue. There was a commonality between what people viewed as a common sense platform, which has now been completely thrown out. And you see this as the left adopts stronger and stronger positions, reparations, like I said, transing the children, universal everything, essentially open borders philosophy, paying for illegal immigrants to have college, healthcare, phones, the way the homeless population is treated in the United States, allowing them to camp everywhere and anywhere. And we're going to talk about, by the way, a brand new California proposal that includes creating homeless masturbation and F centers. Yes, as if these people didn't have enough. So the University of Cambridge did this study looking at the polarization in political issues, as I said, since the 1980s. And then also from 2008 onwards, which is where they say it really kickstarted and really started getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And this is from the University of Cambridge's political psychology lab, which per their report analyzed opinions on a wide range of issues, from abortion and equality to traditional values. Abortion is another great topic, by the way. Speaking of radicalization, it was understood that abortion, the way abortion was couched, and really, if you had obviously Christian fundamentalists and Catholics, they would disagree and say, okay, life begins at conception. But The average person tended to agree that abortion, as it was presented, right, only when absolutely necessary, that was okay, right? Okay. If it had to be done, it had to be done. But now you have leftists and you have all these different states pushing to have abortion up until and including past at certain points when a child is born, a viable fetus is born. That's the kind of thing that we're keying into. So again, this is something that they took a look at, and it's going against, I guess, some of the research of people self-identifying as Republican or Democrat. This latest study, they say, uses machine learning to go beyond such labels, using, quote, clustering algorithms to examine polarization around underlying issues. And, quote, there can be various reasons why voters feel they belong in a particular party, from media they consume to communities in which they live, even if many of their attitudes don't fit. Clustering algorithms provide an objective, bottom-up way to analyze shifts in political opinion beyond the ideologies of national parties. So this looked at 35,000 survey responses gathered between 1988 and 2024 for the American National Election Studies. And let's see, I'm trying to see like what some of the specific issues in. It's a very long paper, as you'd imagine. But, well, I'm not going to read this whole thing. But the core fundamental finding was that, as I mentioned, conservatives have moved, they said in the study, 6% more conservative. And that's probably in response to issues like immigration, where you see what's happening with people coming in, you see job losses, you see all of the tax and welfare systems, being, well, essentially, if you look at Minnesota and California, the amount of fraud that's existing in those situations, but also on top of that, the amount of spending, both federally and on a state level, that goes towards these welfare systems and services, like for the homeless. And then you extend that into the immigration situations where you've got millions upon millions of dollars going to fund people who empirically do not have the exact same tax obligations that you do. They do not have the same amount of time put into a community, into a civilization as you do. They've not been essentially part of that. And yet they are benefiting to a greater degree than the average person. Because the average person now, while we do have a lot of people that are on welfare and that are getting handouts from the government, and now we're to the point where I think our federal budget, the amount of money spent on welfare spending and entitlement spending is something like 7 times the amount that we spend on the military. And yes, we spend too much on the military, but that should really bother the living shit out of people. That there's that many people who either need it, right? And then you say, okay, why do they need it? Well, of course, because of all the different regulations, all the different strangulation points that the government puts on us, high taxation levels, the amount of problems that we have in simply getting a business started. And I can tell you, somebody who's tried to start a business and how expensive it is to do that, to keep it running, to keep it going. Just before you even start, you're looking at a mountain of paperwork and a mountain of money that you have to spend. And then additionally, they put everything out there that you have to covering. And again, this is a leftist issue, covering lawsuits for what has become the radicalization of workplaces, AKA HR practices, racism utilized in hiring, in promotions. Not only that, but also if you have somebody that happens to identify as trans, as gay, as whatever, any race, you can be sued for almost any reason. And it's almost impossible to fire somebody in today's world. And this is all led by leftists going to the extreme and getting away from common sense, which is you should be able to run a business. You should be able to operate a business. But this study shows that the U.S. is different from most countries around the world, which is pretty fascinating. And you wonder, okay, why? Right? So they're saying in developing countries, we see a large culturally conservative majority and a culturally liberal minority. In highly developed countries, you see a socially liberal majorities, if only by a small margin. The U.S. is unusual in having a left and right of roughly equal size. This has been the case for a long time, and it may explain why polarization in the U.S. feels so intense. The problem is they found no clear evidence that opinion polarization is increasing on a global scale. So what does that tell you? If we're not having polarization increase on a global scale, that means that we're dealing with a very unique set of circumstances. And by the way, I find that a little hard to believe because I have to think that the UK and Europe are getting polarized. But I think the issue there is that the problems in the UK and Europe with mass migration are recent problems, really over the last 5 to 10 years, recent problems. So this study probably goes farther beyond that. They're probably not looking at that specifically. But in the case of the United States, I think you have to look at, number one, the absolute control and capture of the academia, right? So you've got a system wherein children are coming up, their parents have a more rational base, but their children are coming up, being radicalized within these systems. They're being taught by what has now become a complete capture of academia by the left, and in most cases, the extreme left, because a lot of these people coming up are Marxist. They have subscribed to the farthest left theories possible. They have no repercussions for putting out this bullshit into the world because they live in academia. They're protected behind the ivy walls of their schools. They get paid regardless of their opinion. And in fact, a lot of their administrators agree with them. So you've got these people coming in. And again, we know this from studies that it's something like 93% of academics at universities are left identifying, where it used to be a far more even split. But you look at the hiring, the way in which people are hired nowadays, you look at the demographics in hiring, and you can see how these things happen. But that's one of the components to why the United States, I think, is uniquely suited and why these opinions become so great. Because they're so great. Because you have academics that are left-wing ideologues. And you combine that at the exact same time with the federal government coming in and saying, we're going to give everybody student loans and everybody should go to college. So you're propping up a system wherein everybody's forced into going to college, or at least highly recommended, right? Nobody wants to do the blue collar jobs anymore, which typically a lot of your more conservative people did happen to do those jobs outside of finance, right? There's another recent study that came out showing that people in finance and engineering tended to be a little bit more conservative and far less identifying as far as LGBTQT stuff. But you have a lot of these people that now aren't in these jobs, which is a crisis in the country. We don't have enough people to do these jobs. You have people being ushered into colleges where they are being radicalized in the millions. Every year, we've got millions of people graduating college who are radicalized. And I've talked about this before. They're coming out into a world in which, because of the forces of state and federal governments making business so difficult to do, and also taking away people's, essentially taking away people's ability to earn a living, because the cost of living is so high, because the cost of doing business is so high, you're not having the hiring, combined with a mass immigration problem, combined with H-1B visas coming in and taking away a lot of entry-level jobs that would go to college graduates, while also replacing, and in many times forcing people to train their own replacing long-tenured American citizens with cheaper foreign labor that is brought in mass. So, of course, you're going to have this polarization. You have kids coming out from these indoctrination centers who cannot find a job. Thus, they are going to have the most extreme opinions. They're already coming out with them. They don't get exposed to the real world. They don't get jobs to learn that, oh, there's other opinions, there's other people, there's other ways things work, because they're sitting at home on their fucking parents' couches. Meanwhile, you've got the social contagion that is all of these ideas being pushed through on your algorithms. You've got a mainstream media which paints every issue as a good versus evil issue now. And think about the way that mainstream media portrays these things. It is no longer fact-based reporting. It is good versus evil. The people that are commenting on it are always positioning it as such. Good versus evil. You've got politicians who used to have some sort of decorum and respect in their dialogue, now basically accusing each other of being Nazis and rapists all the time. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, there's no alternative than to become polarized when you have all of these different factors weighing down on you. The problem is, now that we've identified it, how do you fix it? And certain things, on a bright side of this little rant, certain things have triggered some of that. COVID, for example, is triggering some of that. The people who are not simply sticking their heads in the sand, and the apologists for Fauci, like The Economist and other shit rags, those people are looking at the objective data that we were lied to about the virus. We were lied to about the vaccines. We were lied to about the efficacy. We were lied to about masks. We were lied to about social distancing. We were lied to about how long we had to stay at home. We were lied to about how many businesses would close. We were lied to about what children could and couldn't do and who was actually at risk. We were lied to about everything. And then Anthony Fauci comes out here and you find his diary where he knew all of this and lied to our faces anyway, with the full backing of the federal government, the World Health Organization, the CDC, and everyone else. That's a wake up. That should hopefully provide some anti-polarization. You should get some of that from what's going on with the trans situation and the amount of massive lawsuits that are coming in from children who were basically forced down the pathway of having alternate hormones put in their bodies, of having gender reassignment surgeries when all they had was depression or autism or any number of, quote, comorbidities that could cause those types of feelings and behaviors. And again, some of these kids were just victims of social contagion. Just like the girls on TikTok who develop Tourette's syndrome, or they think they do because they're watching people who have Tourette's. The polarization is something that was unavoidable but can be corrected. The problem is that because the left, and we've seen this time and time again, and I'll go back to my bad people theory here, time and time again, because of social media, because we don't talk to each other as communities anymore, we don't try to actually have real empathy, which the left pretends to have, but they don't, which is understanding where somebody else is coming from and trying to put yourself in their position and understand where they are coming from, what their logic is, and why they think the way they think, instead of just calling people evil. The problem is the left does not ever back down. They will never say, we were wrong about mass immigration. We were wrong about how we have the homeless situation. We were wrong about transing all the kids. We were wrong about COVID. They will instead tell you that you're wrong, or they'll just ignore it and move on to the next big divisive topic, like climate change, which is another issue, by the way, which the left has gone completely fucking batshit crazy on. They'll never say, you guys might be right. We overstepped our bounds here and we were wrong. You know, it might still be a problem, but we don't need to treat it like we have been. And you're not a bad person for thinking what you do about it and disagreeing with me. They'll never do that. That's going to lead to more polarization on the other side of the fence, which is why you have young men, especially young white men. And John Odermatt just did his Monday episode about this, and I've talked about this, seeing the blatant discrimination against them when it comes to the workplace. You have this idiotic Wall Street Journal, video piece done by a Nepo baby. You know, she literally is like, God, was it the Rothschilds or, one of these super, super wealthy families that has been poisoning the well for generations and has more money than God, who went to Yale and somehow gets a job at the Wall Street Journal, telling young white men that they don't understand what the problem is, why they're dropping out of the workforce. They're not dropping out. They're being discriminated against systematically, and they have been for 20 years. And I have seen this in my own life. If I try to get a job and to try to apply to a job, right, which I have at certain times, especially coming out of COVID, you don't get responses to anything because the people that are leading HR departments are ideologically driven, many times women who are DEI obsessed, that are feminism obsessed, that simply are not hiring white men. And they're told specifically, do not hire white men. You've seen numerous articles written just recent days citing this exact thing, talking to HR managers who say, we were told not to hire white men. So where do you think all of these people who are coming out, who see the discrimination, what do you think? Is that going to make them more or less polarized? But yet, in comparison, if this Cambridge study is accurate, their polarization is still nowhere close to the left. The same left, which we have seen, accuse the right of violence, right? Joe Biden, extremism, white extremism. The violence that comes from the right pales in comparison, again, by 10 times to what happens on the left. Look at any trans rally and what they do to who they perceive as, quote, TERFs. Violence. Look at Antifa and the amount of violence. Look at the George Floyd riots and the amount of violence. Look at the Asian was it Asian Lives Matter, where that got dropped real quick when they found out that everybody that was being attacked was Asian was being attacked by a black person. Remember that? This is what we're talking about. And yet we have no apologies. We have no calls for sanity. Right now, you've got the Democrat Socialist of America gaining in popularity by leaps and bounds, despite the fact that they will absolutely ruin our country. And the Democrat establishment, they might try to undercut these people. But AOC made essentially a deal with the devil in Nancy Pelosi, where AOC will go, okay, well, I'm just going to, we'll bring in the radical left, but I'll also play ball with the establishment. So you've got the worst of both worlds. And that you've got the Democrat establishment going there, while the radical bullshit is still being woven into the modern Democrat Party, who's going to look at the DSA if they keep getting power and go, well, we better adopt more of what they're thinking. rather than to knock these people back and be like, this shit's been tried. It doesn't work. It will never work. And you are going to destroy everything around you. It's incredible. And it's something that anybody that, again, is not already part of the left and completely brainwashed, completely blinded, can see very clearly. It's been something that we've been talking about for years, and very few people other than the Bill Maher's of the world will actually step out there and go, you've lost your fucking minds. This study, while we're talking about it, I guarantee will not find any mainstream media coverage, because the mainstream media, again, are people that graduate from the same universities, the same elite universities, have the same far leftist ideologies, believe that they have to push forward their viewpoint, not real truth and data. And this is also comes from another study from, I think it was like the Columbia School of Journalism, who did a study of majors within media and basically said that something like 65% of them believed that pushing forward the right thing rather than the truth was the best thing to do, and that they would cater their coverage accordingly. And you see that play out on a daily fucking basis. And it's crazy. Okay. Moving on, I want to talk about this other topic. So I mentioned the homeless jerk-off booths. Yes, you heard me correct. So like we said, the radicalization of the understanding of what homeless people are, what they deserve, what they should and should be treated as, have gotten so far removed from reality. And apparently all of the consequences are ignored until they reach a certain point where people go, okay, we have to slap it back, but they creep in. I talked about last episode how the LA City Council, led by a Democrat socialist, just removed all of the camping restrictions, which had stopped the homeless from taking over entire parks and turning them into feces-covered, needle-covered dens of drug abuse, violence, open air, masturbation, etc. Well, the LA City Council, instead of going, you know what, we should crack down on this stuff, because I'm sorry, while you have rights as a person, you do not have the right to go out there and destroy other people's property, to lower property values, to go wherever you want, while everybody that you're hurting gets to pay for it. Instead of doing that, they had a better idea. And this is what was proposed. Quote, I'd like to propose that Los Angeles consider a pilot program for free hygienic sexual relief clinics, primarily serving the homeless and unhoused. So hopefully that means I can still pop in once in a while for some jerking. This means equality. This means equality. Apparently giving the homeless somewhere to jerk off and fuck is equality. Because, that's one of your basic rights, right? You're born with certain rights, inalienable rights, and apparently masturbating is one of them. It means private sexual relief through masturbation or where appropriate and consensual with a partner, all funded by tax dollars and managed with professional oversight. It's about allowing the homeless to have the same comforts and privacy as we have today. How about fuck you? How about no? How about all the insane things I can think of to pay for? That's not even something that I would have come up with in my own sick mind, although I will probably write a joke about it and tell it on Sunday when I have a comedy show. I'm sorry. These people have tents. They have bathrooms. They have, by the way, especially in California and Los Angeles, they have housing waiting for them. You can get private rooms. They don't want them. They don't want them. And if they created this environment, it would be destroyed in 2 days. You'd have people locking themselves. If you could provide a homeless person with a locked door, they're going to sit inside there. They're going to hoard trash. They're not going to leave. They're going to do drugs in there. They're going to pass out and die. That's what's going to happen. Who's signing up? What is this? Okay, guys, we're putting out a call. What do they have to pay something? $150,000 a year to clean up homeless spunk? Anal leakage from homeless people going at it in this privately, private domicile where the homeless get to come in because, we as homeowners or apartment leasers, we get to jerk off wherever we want. We can have sex on any part of the house. Why should these people get that? They jerk off on buses. We know that. They jerk off in public parks. They jerk off in front of children. Is this going to stop them from doing that? No, of course not. Because the homeless don't care. They are crazy, they are drug addicts, or they are sexual perverts, or all three. Why would it be more attractive if you're a homeless person, instead of just jerking off in your tent you set up on the side of the road or in a park, or going to a school, or jerking off in front of some poor lady, why would it be more attractive to go to a little private booth where you get to check in and write your name, and maybe you give collateral, maybe you give the dead raccoon you found on the street you're going to munch on later, which by the way nobody does, because these people get more food given to them than children do in this city, and money and cell phones and everything else. The amount of support, the homeless in LA have just as much or more support than Lindsay Clancy got, and that's saying something. Why would you seek out a booth to go and jerk off in when you could just do it wherever you want, and you have been? This is the fundamental radicalized stupidity of the left. And that's what it is. It's radicalized stupidity. It's idiot ideas that will never work, that people come up with to make themselves feel better. And you can see it in the language. You can see it in the language. This is about equality. It's about equality. I feel good because these people are able to jerk off like me. That's what this is about. Feeling good about yourself to the point where the person that proposed this probably is going to get off by jerking off, thinking about the homeless jerking off. That's what this is. It's fucking masturbation. Fuck these people. Psychotic. All right. Last thing ties into all this. California just lost yet another massive corporation. This is on top of losing companies like Chevron, companies like Tesla. You're looking at the mass exodus and maybe soon Paramount, right? Because our idiot attorney general is suing to stop a merger, which everybody else already said is fine to go forward because he's a jackass. And because this is a conservative, now they perceive it as a conservative studio and it's under the Trump administration. So they're opposing it. And it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of jobs if they manage to stop this thing. But another California company, which is down in Irvine, which is south of me and a little inland, called CG Oncology, NASDAQ traded company. This is a multi-billion-dollar company, has relocated its corporate headquarters to Dallas. Yeah. Relocated to Dallas. So all the people that now had jobs here in California either have to relocate or get fired. I doubt many of them can work remote, considering the fact that it's scientific research, but they provide infrastructure advantages. They probably get farther. We all know this, much farther, greater tax relief than they ever get here. Plus, you don't have to deal with all of California's insane regulations about employment, who you can employ, who you can fire, when you can fire them. Plus, I'm sure just putting the new headquarters in there is vastly cheaper. Like everything is cheaper and better, and there's less regulation everywhere except California. We are going to turn into a Detroit. We've already driven away the Hollywood industry. Like the filmmaking industry has already moved on. I talked this before. The number of friends I have that cannot find jobs or have to fly to Ireland or fly to other states constantly to work is staggering. That is on California. There's no other ifs and buts about it. That's on California. With hyper regulation, with unions having way too much power, with hyper taxation, it fucking sucks. So these people are moving out. Why am I going to pay 30% more if I can just go to another state and they'll welcome me with open arms and I'll be celebrated rather than demonized like they do for every corporation, because radical leftists lead in every single level of government. They demonize corporations. Why the hell would you want to stay? I guess to use the homeless jerk-off boots. All right, that's it, guys. Hopefully better days ahead. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to buy Woke Word Wars on Amazon. Very funny, very fun card game, making fun of, oddly enough, the radicalized stupidity of the left. So you will have a great time playing it. All right, thanks. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty, and from Mean Age Daydream. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head.